In this video, there are technically 80 secrets, but 70 of them exist within this piece of merch I'm calling Convergence. Here, worlds inspired by Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Tokyo intersect in a crossfire of wholesome references. It's available as a gorgeous displate metal print in the description below, and for a limited time only, it's 20% off, but only if you use the link in the description. Also, I'm giving a full refund to a bunch of lucky buyers who managed to find some of the trickier secrets in this piece. Look to the description to learn more. But let's get into the actual secrets, starting with this statue found in Firelink Shrine. In an unused cutscene, it moves, revealing, well, nothing. It's a different story in the concept art, however. Behind this statue, a dark, earthy tunnel is shown, and the man who is supposed to reveal it is Andre. According to the design works, he was supposed to play a far more important role in the story. He was originally a descendant of Gwyn, whose task it was to protect a door within the Firelink Shrine. In the end, he was going to push aside this goddess statue to let you progress, but as development progressed, he became just a simple blacksmith. But with the modding skills of Sanadis K, we're able to see this cutscene play out properly once more. It's kind of a shame that this was changed. I feel like Andre opening a secret path to the kiln so that you can go down deep below to kill one of his family members would have hit pretty powerfully at the end of the game. But being vomited out by Framt will have to do, I guess. One of the best secret bosses of Dark Souls is Gwyndolin, who is a child of Gwyn who is tucked away in the crypt behind an illusory wall. And unlike his siblings, there are no statues of Gwyndolin outside, and he prefers to manipulate events outside, behind the scenes. But that doesn't mean he was kept a complete secret from the world. It's quite the opposite, in fact. Take a look at this. It shows Gwyn in Anor Londo, standing behind his Silver Knights, and thanks to state-of-the-art image enhancement technologies, we can now see Gwyndolin clearly standing behind his father. For number 3, we have an enemy called King Lava and Mosquitoes. A creature that was actually known about for a long time, but only was restored in recent years when Souls modder Meow Maritus manually restored its model skeleton so that all of its animations would work. Originally, this enemy was supposed to be featured in your Blighttown experience, chasing you slowly through the swamp. And really interestingly, we think this enemy was envisioned as a sort of source of all the mosquitoes flying around. The clumps on its back are actually separately hideable in the model viewer, and Meow Maritus discovered that they were supposed to drop off and spawn another enemy, which is almost certainly the mosquitoes based on its name. You should go and follow Meow Maritus and all of the other creators in the link in the description. Shouting out all of these people and all of these discoveries that you might not have found out about is half the reason I make these videos, and you will learn so much more by following these folks. Anyway, this cut enemy clearly has a place where it belongs, but there was a time where From was less sure about things. For example, in the design works, Miyazaki says that originally the centipede demon from Izalith was going to fight you before you rang the bell of awakening, something that they obviously had to change, which ended up prompting them to design a more fitting enemy for the church, the gargoyles, which became so iconic. Another boss that changed a lot in development was Nito, who was at one point, like many other enemies, placed at the end of one of the first areas they designed, the Painted World. Miyazaki talks a lot about how his design actually gave them a lot of trouble, how he would tell the animators that he wanted Nito to have a sort of miasma, but he would always come back as if he was on fire, sort of covered in smoke. Eventually, it seems, they settled on this sort of cloth-like aura he has. And many NPCs and enemies came from the Painted World, considering it was a sort of prototype map. The floor at the end here was actually supposed to crumble at some point, which led to suspicions that it may have even housed the demon Fire Sage, who is called Snow Demon in the game's data. The fact that he's in the Painted World is just speculation based on the name and the arena, and even Priscilla wasn't originally designed to be here. She was actually meant to be the game's heroine character, found in Firelink Shrine. Lastly, the Taurus Demon appears on the roof of the asylum in the concept art, not the Stray Demon. Both of them suit the place though, as Oscar was clearly smashed down into this room by something on the roof, and both these demons are able to jump higher than you'd expect. Speaking of below, let's talk about the Gurm from Dark Souls 2. Enemies that were found almost exclusively within the caves of Pharos. In-game lore for the Gurm reads, "The stocky Gurm are kind-natured, but humans deemed them impure and drove them underground. Most Gurm descendants refuse contact with outsiders and live with a sense of deep contempt for those who exiled them. And that's it. No real context for this exile is provided. No why, no when, nothing. Unless you read the design works. I think we spoke briefly about the gutter, and the Gurm were originally created as its denizens, manual labourers employed by the king to work on the underground waterways below the castle. It's possible that the creation of these sewers is why the Gurm were deemed impure by these selfish, arrogant humans, and the sewers were also likely to be the original place they were exiled to, since there is evidence of a way more developed sewer area in the cut content of the game. Do you remember this short scene from the Dark Souls 2 cinematic? Well, look how similar it is to this. This is just a small part of an incredible video by Illusory Wall, who explores these lost map files for the gutter and discovers an area that's far more in line with some of the original concept art for the place. There are fascinating things down here. You go through the upside-down ruins of housing, you walk past a crumbling statue of Nishandra, and you discover a sort of village that's built endlessly upon itself, and best of all, there's even this cozy little bar area here, which is tucked away above these giant barrels that look like they're a sort of distillery for the place. Illusory Wall goes on to point out the link between Gavlan's drinking habit and this cozy little place, and man, connecting this place to the Gurm's alcoholism does wonders for their characterization, right? His video has really helped to flesh out the sort of tragic story of the Gurm and the gutter that they were enslaved to build, and I highly recommend you watch the entire thing over on his channel. Bloodborne deserves a PC port. Bloodborne deserves a PS5 re-release. These are things that you're going to continue to hear over the next few years, and it's mainly fueled by one thing, that's frame rate. Despite being one of From's fastest paced titles and relying on your use of invincibility frames more than most, Bloodborne has an average frame rate of 30 frames per second. As we head into the next generation, and consoles manage to maintain 60 frames per second even at 2560 by 1440p resolutions, like what the Demon's Souls remake was recently revealed to be running at, as things get better, Bloodborne's age is going to become more and more apparent, and some console players who were never really aware of how good 60 frames per second feels are going to now truly understand what they've been missing, and we're all missing a lot. What you're seeing now is Bloodborne running at 60 frames per second, thanks to the modding work of the legendary Lance McDonald, by pulling the resolution back from 1080p to 720p, and changing the frame rate cap to 60, and also turning on the PlayStation 4 Pro's boost mode. Lance manages to create this mode that is irrefutably better than the stuttering 30 frames and 1080p that the game shipped with on the original PlayStation. That said, From Software did make the right decision to ship at 1080p 30 at the game's launch. The base PS4 can't hit 60 frames per second in Bloodborne even at 720p, so From Software decided to ship at a more marketable resolution instead. You should check out this interview with Lance on Digital Foundry's channel to learn more about the fascinating technical details like this. I called it for Demon's Souls, and I'm gonna try and call it for Bloodborne. This game deserves a remaster, even if it's just a frame rate patch. Sony, please, do it. It's free real estate. Speaking of Bloodborne's release, do you remember this scene from the intro cinematic? It ends with a hunter exploring a crypt, and a cleric beast slashes them into a cut to darkness. Once again, thanks to Lance, we realized that Bloodborne's intro CGI was slightly censored, and the full version cuts to a blood splatter on the dimly lit tiles. Not sure why they shied away from blood in Bloodborne, but there you go. Number 8. Demon's Souls. Not Demon Souls, not Demon's Souls. Demon's Souls. That apostrophe changes everything. It's very important for the meaning of the title. But don't worry, unless you're in the comments section talking about the Demon's Souls remake, they all kinda sound the same, so no one will ever really know if you've been saying it wrong. But it's time for a lesson in grammar. No, don't leave. This will be in your test, so pay attention. If the title had no apostrophe and was just called Demon Souls, the title would be like Dark Souls. It's referring more to demonic souls. If the apostrophe came after the S, it would be referring to the souls that are shared by a number of demons. This too would have obviously worked as a title. But in the actual title, the apostrophe comes before the S, so it's possessive, meaning the title suggests that there's one demon and that it has many souls. Since there's lots of demons in the game that possess souls, a lot of people actually think that the title is a grammatical error, but it's not. Instead, the singular possessive demon mentioned here is almost certainly the Old One, which, as the apostrophe suggests, is literally this all-encompassing demon possessive of all souls. The Old One was created alongside souls, and all demons in the game serve it, actually gathering souls to give to it, even you. Alternatively, I guess the title could conceivably be talking about you, since you are in a similar position, a quote-unquote demon aiming to be possessive of all souls. There. Now you can go and complain about the Demon Souls remake, and no one will be able to make fun of you, for your grammar, at least. Now, while Bluepoint might make a few missteps with a few enemy designs and things like that, you know, at least they're not going to accidentally put 2 copies of the game on the same disc, like From Software did. Lance, once again, recently pointed out that in the original Demon Souls, they placed the .dcx compressed version of the game on the disc alongside larger, uncompressed versions of the files as well. The end result is a game that shipped on a 50GB Blu-ray, which could have easily fit on a 25GB Blu-ray had the mistake been caught before release. I want to end this video with a trend that I've noticed, and goddammit, it's been over 480 days since Elden Ring was announced. I want to talk about it again. Anyway, the trend is arms. In Dark Souls, Manus, arguably the end boss of the game, has a ton of his corruption focused on one enormous arm, which he mainly attacks you with. In Bloodborne, they clearly liked this design trend, and the Cleric Beast also has one terrible arm and one fairly normal one. You even got an arm weapon in this game, and then again in Dark Souls 3. In Sekiro, the idea of a powerful arm moves onto the character and begins to influence the player's gameplay, which is a concept that I'm almost certain Miyazaki is sort of pulling from the protagonist of Berserk, which is a series that has famously inspired other elements of From Software's games as well. That brings us to Elden Ring, where I'm fully expecting arms to be a thing in some way. For example, the Valkyrie has replaced one arm with a prosthetic one, and she appears to be losing her other arm to some sort of rust or rot, and I wouldn't be surprised if this was related to the dark ritual that this character is performing, where they've actually inserted one of their arms into the severed forearm of another. Maybe they're adding to their terrible, misshapen collection, and that collection of arms behind them is supporting this process. It's nice to remember Elden Ring exists sometimes, isn't it? It's definitely been delayed at this point, surely, but I wonder why. It could be due to development issues, it could be thanks to COVID, or perhaps they're just taking a step back to sort of get some really ambitious element right. In my opinion, it might just be a combination of everything, and maybe From Software and Namco figured they might as well do a full release on next-gen consoles at this point. But whatever it is, Demon Souls will satiate Souls fans as we head into 2021, so I guess the most realistic date for Elden Ring now is late 2021? Man, when the gameplay gets announced, the community is going to implode. I really hope that they've taken the time to get their vision right. I can't wait, so subscribe, look forward to that, check out the merch, and I'll see you next time.